You're watching What She Said on YouTube.
Judy, I'm Christine Bentley with Kate Wheeler, but joining us now is author and wellness expert Trish Tonaj, who has just authored a book called A Diary of Change, 12 Personal Tools. Welcome, Trish.
Thank you.
Now, there are a number of events that can literally change anyone's life in 30 seconds, so the change can be 180 degrees. Tell everyone what happened to you.
Well, I had come back from celebrating my 20th wedding anniversary and found out that my husband had been having an affair for 5 years. So that was definitely not in my plan.
How did you find out?
Her ex-husband called to let me know that they had been seeing each other for the last 5 years.
Okay, so hang on a second. Her ex-husband, so they had got divorced.
No, they were still married at the time.
They were still married. They were separated. So, no.
They weren't
No,
separated.
but you just said her ex-husband.
Well, he's her ex-husband now.
Now,
Yeah.
I see. So her husband at the time
Correct.
called to tell you that his wife was having an affair with your husband.
Correct.
That's not the first time I've heard about that. That happened to another friend of mine, and I heard about that story when I was live on the air, actually interviewing Mike Duffy. I got an email from my friend that got the same thing. Got a phone call saying that
it's a very common story. It's not, my story is not unique. I think what's unique is how I tried to change a negative situation into something very positive.
But first of all, because it's just such a stunning thing, what went through your mind then? Did you believe him?
I was in shock, actually. I can remember wandering around my house talking to someone on the phone that I didn't know and knew that my life would change forever.
Now, on top of that, according to your book, you had just celebrated an anniversary. You also had plans, the two of you, to move somewhere. So you had sold your business.
Correct.
All these things had been going on where you had literally pulled the rug out from under yourself to sort of hang your star on,
Correct.
On him. And suddenly there you were out.
Yeah.
With
dangling in the wind.
Dangling in the wind.
Well, it's, as I say, a very common story. It's not very unique in that lots of men and women go through this type of situation, and I knew that I was going to have to come up with something, some tips or tools, a survival formula, something that was going to take me from one place to another, and that's what I proceeded to develop.
So you share the diary of your whole experience, but why did you decide to write the book? A lot of people keep that information private, and you're pretty candid about your pain.
Correct. One of the reasons why I actually wrote the book is I had been talking to a number of individuals who were experiencing the same sort of life change, and I had been telling them about the tips and tools that I was using to try to get over the shock and transition and ease into a new life. And everybody kept encouraging me to actually share my story. And I thought, in today's day and age, we try to keep all these things behind closed doors, and the face that we have in public is not the same face that we have in private. And I thought maybe, it would help other individuals to realize that you're not alone, because I certainly felt alone when I had first heard the news, and that you can actually change something that seems or appears to be very negative into something that can be quite positive. So I looked at it as an opportunity for change.
Now, your friend Jane Blofeld describes you as someone who operates at Mach 2 with her hair on fire. So this must have slowed you down.
Oh, absolutely. It actually ground me to an absolute halt. Someone had said, this experience will take the wind out of your sails, but I was actually brought to my knees because I also had just recently closed my business, so I had no means of income. So absolutely, it definitely changed the dynamic of the speed at which I was moving through life.
So we're going to get to the 12 tools in a minute, but I'm just a little bit confused. So here you are in shock. You decide to share this story,
right? And
you have some very concrete steps to take, and you document them. And so you have a plan. You really have a plan for how this should be done. And yet on the other hand, there's a very Zen side to all this where repeatedly through the book you're saying, well, what will be, will be.
Correct.
And, if it's meant to be, it will be. So I found that dichotomy a little hard.
Well, it's interesting because you can't control someone else's behavior. You can only control your response. So I knew that if, quite clearly, Michael wasn't happy, and he'd moved on with his life. So the negative energy or negative feelings that I would have had throughout that experience were only going to hurt myself. So I had to change that attitude and way of thinking and say, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to do something new and different. And that's the approach that I took.
So when do you do the planning? If I'm a person who's going through this, when do I say, okay, I'm going to follow the book? And when do I say, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be? When do I choose those?
I think that the 12 tips and tools are something that can assist you as you're easing through that transition. And different people do that at different times. I mean, I sort of looked at my situation within a span of a week. I sort of decided that I had to have a plan in order to move to the next step. Because I'd always been, I think I mentioned in my book, I'm a type A personality. So going at Mach 2 with my hair on fire is pretty much the way I was living my life. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do this and get through it with my dignity intact, then I need to come up with some sort of a plan to transition into a new place. So within about a week or two after the experience or the journey started, I started working on a formula and trying to come up with a plan that was going to take me to that next level.
So what was the crux of your message to yourself, what you needed?
You know what, I actually started, because at that time I was becoming a personal trainer, so for me it was fitness. I actually started to develop a plan based on health and wellness that would get me outside, have some fresh air, do some walking, give you an opportunity to think, and start a new routine, which was really important as you ease into a new place.
What, routine's important, or the fitness, or both?
Both actually, because I think in order to get over any kind of shocking experience, you need to kind of refocus your energy. So for me, it was actually developing a pretty concrete fitness routine.
Yeah, and you also talked about losing a lot of weight at the beginning,
and
that you then eventually layered in, because what you've done is you've got the tools and then you've layered in other things.
Correct.
Things to help your physical well-being, and diet was one thing.
Oh, for sure. I first ate cupcakes for about the first 6 months of my journey, because everything else tasted like driveway gravel, and somehow that pretty little cupcake got me to the next place. And it wasn't until one of my friends kind of looked at me and said, you kind of look a little pasty-faced, like what's going on? And I thought, okay, I have to, I knew better. I knew that all that sugar wasn't going to help, but for some reason it was my comfort food.
Now, to tell, did you have children?
No.
Children then?
No.
So you were really on your own.
I was indeed.
So that sort of, I'm not going to say that must help, but you know what I mean? I mean, you don't have to worry about the reaction of other people. You're just dealing with yourself.
Well, actually you do, because my poor parents must have aged 20 years in one day, because to have to, I had been in a relationship with Michael for 30 years, so that's quite a significant amount of time. And the ripple effect, so, you think that it's only two people that are involved in the decision, but it actually, the ripple effect extends quite far to your friends and family, and everybody in one way, shape, or form is affected.
Well, you weren't actually involved in the decision, were you?
No, not really. No, that's very true. The decision was made for me. Yeah. The only thing that I could do was sort of pick up the pieces and move on.
Well, one of the things you talked about quite poignantly was the first holidays, how tough that is, and also the division of friends, how friends pick sides, and how deeply hurt you were when you needed certain people to be there and they weren't.
Oh, for sure. It's a real learning experience when you realize that not only is the dynamics of your life changed, but your whole social network has to change. So, for sure, it was definitely a learning experience to see who was going to be sort of stick there beside you and who was going to sort of run for the hills and say, oh, God, I don't want to be part of this because it's too negative and awful.
Was it all a surprise to you, how that...
I think when you go through something new for the first time, you really don't know what to expect. So you kind of journey through it, and the transition is something that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So that first year for me was a real eye-opening experience in a lot of ways. I had to deal with Thanksgiving, Christmas, all within the first 3 months of being separated. So those holidays were really difficult because, I remember the Thanksgiving. And, normally what people do when you're sitting around the table for dinner is you talk about what you're thankful for. And I thought, oh, good God, if we're going to do that, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it through dinner. So, thankfully enough, the folks that I was with at Thanksgiving, we didn't go around the table and say what we were thankful for. And I'm sure I had a few extra glasses of wine at that dinner to try to get through the experience. But it's definitely a point of transition. I mean, it's a really good point. Those holidays are really difficult the first time around because what you used to do as part of your family tradition is no longer the same.
And you're finding new normals.
Absolutely.
New groupings of families and friends, and everybody has to adjust.
For sure, and your friends do too, because everybody sort of for a period of time walks on eggshells because they don't want to say the wrong thing. They're really not sure if you're going to crumble. I mean, one of the things I talked about in the book was being in a support group. And the very first night sitting there was 60 people in a circle, and the traditional thing to do was to go around the room and say your name and how long you had been separated or divorced. And I remember sitting there and saying, my name, hello, my name is Trish. I've been separated for 3 days, and the reason why I wasn't here last week is because I wasn't separated then. And everybody kind of gasped and was like waiting for me to burst into tears. And I just was looking around the room thinking, okay, would the next person please talk? Because I really don't have anything else to say.
Oh my goodness.
Do you find, I find that there is this sort of phase of where women want to share a lot about what happened, then they might regret oversharing, and then they find a balance.
I think to a certain point that's true. I mean, I certainly waited for a period of time before I shared my story to make sure that I was comfortable with all of the emotions that were going to be depicted, because it wasn't just me who would be reading the story. I have friends and family too, and I wanted to make sure that everyone was going to be comfortable with what I had written.
You're watching What She Said on YouTube.
Go through some of these tools that are integral to being able to navigate all this fairly successfully, if there is such a thing. Right, Trish?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to go through their journey a little differently.
Absolutely.
I wrote the book as a diary and sort of have some tips and tools along the way by month. But I mean, some people may transition very quickly, and the tips and tools that might be in December, they might need earlier or later in their journey. So.
Exactly.
Well, the fact that you were at a group meeting in 3 days, that's moving pretty quickly. A lot of people they still have the covers over their head at that
That's
point.
true. That's true. Yeah, no, I just thought, no, I really didn't want to talk to my friends and family because there was too many things that are embarrassing. You don't really know what to expect. So I thought, what better way than talk to other folks who are in a similar situation who can help you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that
was
tip
support
number
groups.
one?
Actually, no. Tip number one was meditation, believe it or not.
Oh.
Yeah, because I kind of thought that in order to calm the mind and have a new perspective, I was going to need to try to decompress. So meditation.
Well, what does meditation mean to you? Because it means different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I talk about different ways in which people can try to meditate. And for me, I'm not that kind of, cross-legged, fingers on the knees, kind of person. So I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? So I went to the library. I was Googling how to meditate, trying to look for all different ways.
You really are an A-type.
I really am. Well, at one point, I remember standing in my kitchen going through emails and saying, can I Google a new life? There's got to be somebody out there who can sort of say, yes, and this is what you should do. And I would just have followed that path. It's almost like, when someone says they're driving in a snowstorm and they follow the transport truck into his driveway if they had to. I was kind of in that mode. I would have followed whatever anybody had said was the right thing to do. So I ended up just doing a meditation technique that sort of walked me through a place that I felt really comfortable and that I wanted to look forward to in the future, and that was traveling. So it was sort of sitting on the beach and feeling the warm sun on your so that sort of thing.
So a daydream kind of?
Sort of. It's called a guided meditation, so some people can actually record their voice and then play it back. And I couldn't even think straight, so recording anything was not an option. So I just sort of sat there and talked myself through it.
Okay, well, Kate, I take it back. If daydreaming is part of meditation,
Absolutely.
I'm
Then you
into
do it.
meditation. I'm just not into the
Thing.
the
I
whole
get
clear
that.
your brain. I can't clear my brain. My brain is clicking, But if I can think about something,
Yep.
On rapid fire.
And that's like the Mach 2 with hair on fire.
Yeah.
You don't have a chance to
just
sort of relax.
Yeah.
Okay, and then from then?
So I guess that from the meditation, and support group certainly was another one. I mean, I did that right away. I think that's really helpful for a lot of people. You know, you need to sort of have an opportunity to sit with like-minded folks who are going through the same experience and kind of sit there and go, wow, maybe my situation's not that bad, because I'm sure we've all been at those parties when somebody said, you know, if everyone threw their problems into a hat, you'd be happy to take your own back out at the end of the night.
Right.
So it sort of is that little reality check that, you know, maybe my situation is not as bad as I had originally thought it was.
Yeah, in fact, your support group, you got fairly close to some people, and even after the actual term or the life of that particular group ended, you guys decided, many of you decided to still continue meeting.
That's correct. There were 7 of us, and we called ourselves the Group of 7, and we couldn't have been more different in terms of, you know, personality types and backgrounds and life experience. But we'd come to rely on each other. It was sort of your reality check, you know. You would say, so how are you doing this week? Because we only met once a week. And as a group, we decided we would go through another sort of program, 13-week program, and there was a lapse. There was going to be like a 5-week period of time where we wouldn't be meeting with the rest of the group, and we thought, okay, well, we need to continue to meet so that we can support each other throughout the journey. So we did that. We met.
One of the beauties, I think, of probably a support group, even though I think many people think, oh, a support group, I don't need that, I can handle it, is that with your friends, you know, there's always an equal exchange of good news, bad news. You don't want to burden your friends with having to go through that with you.
Absolutely.
I mean, you really, when you're going through a trauma, you just afterwards, you think after you feel guilty about, oh, the hours she had to listen to me.
Correct.
And this way, you're all on an equal footing because you've all got the problem.
Absolutely, and it makes it really easy to talk about it because, you know, you really don't, for the most part, not just only want to burden your friends, but you really don't want everybody to know the sort of icky, gory details that are going on. And if you're in with a group of people, you sort of think, well, you know what, they're sharing their story, so I'll share mine. One of the interesting things I found with writing the book is anyone who's has read the book then, you know, stops me and says, wow, and they end up sharing a life experience that I had no idea that they had in their own journey through life, which is kind of interesting because, you know, I shared my story with the hopes of giving people some tips and tools of how to transition. And some of the people who have read the book have sort of said, you know, I really enjoyed your story, and this is what happened to me. And I thought, wow, this is really great because we traditionally don't do that. We keep these things quiet and private.
So if you were giving somebody the elevator pitch for your book, what would be the key tools you would impart to everyone?
Well, I think that you have to try to transition in such a way that makes you feel good. So you have to trust your gut instinct. You have to really concentrate on your own health and well-being and try to transition through anything with a positive attitude. Because that negative energy, I really do believe in karma. So that negative energy will not
We'll
help
be coming
you.
back to Zach.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know. I certainly wish him all the best. I certainly hope his journey is full of love, laughter, and adventure as well as mine. So.
But what about, Trish, people, for example, everybody reacts differently to
Correct.
trauma. When I go through a trauma, I just stop. I don't know whether to turn left, right. It's not like I'm going down a road and I'm, you know, I need to be pushed into something. I need a trajectory. So if it's that kind of person that you're talking to, as Kate mentioned, what would you tell them? How do you get going? You need to be going somewhere.
Yeah, that's very true. And one of the things, in addition to the fitness, is journaling. So if you start to journal sort of part of your experience, you'll start to see a pattern in your own behavior that can sort of give you your own sort of tips and tools of what you need to do to change. So I was certainly journeying throughout the experience and taking my mind off the actual what was happening to me by concentrating on fitness was helpful.
And also, you made lists. This is
Absolutely.
what I want to get done in this period of time, which is useful. And then you actually did them.
Yeah, you can check off the boxes. That's really empowering to know that, you know, oh, I said by the end of this week I was going to get that resume done. Tick, I've got that done. Well, that's good. Now I need to go to the next step. Because you need to take those little baby steps. Everything is so overwhelming.
I have to find a job.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to, you know. I have to
Exactly.
find a place to live.
Yeah.
I have to move. I have to.
Okay, so with all that then, who has time for meditating and journaling?
Well, you know what? Seriously, the meditation is what keeps you sane. So, I mean, I can even do it at the stoplight now. You know, you're sitting in traffic, everyone's honking their horn and having a hissy fit, and I'm
Oh,
like,
it's you.
okay, I'm going to just decompress here for 30 seconds and turn up the radio or sing or whatever it is that you need to do. But meditation can be, it doesn't have to be something that's, 10 or 15 minutes.
Right. Well, then tell people where they can get your book, and you also give some courses. You speak. You have a speaking
Yes,
tour.
I'm being that I'm a personal trainer and nutrition and wellness specialist. My target market is corporations, so I go into companies and do health and wellness workshops and one-on-one coaching. My book, of course, can be purchased on my website as well as Amazon, and I'm actually very lucky. There is a local retail store called A Passion for Living that's going to be selling my book from November through till Christmas, and I'll be doing some book signings in their locations too, in Burlington, Oakville, and Ancaster. So that's kind of nice.
I'll put that up. So,
Yeah.
I mean, who do you think, if you could put your book in somebody's Christmas stocking, who would be the ideal recipient?
Honestly, it would be anyone, because I think that the tips and tools are not gender specific. So anyone that's going through any kind of transition or change, I mean, just think of professional change. There's all kinds of people who are changing jobs, who are retiring, who may be starting new companies and saying, you know what, I need to be able to look after myself and learn some new things. So hopefully it will help a whole large demographic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
ladies.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.